This is CBC Here and Now.
Industry power players are here in Stephenville tonight, and so is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for an agreement on hydrogen energy. Lots more coming up on Here and Now.
Good evening, I'm Carolyn Stokes. Let's get right to that story. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in the province this evening along with the German Chancellor. It's a story we'll be following throughout the show tonight as events unfold. Trudeau touched down around 4:30 this afternoon. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz wasn't far behind, arriving about a half hour later. Scholz will be meeting with the Prime Minister and other provincial officials, including the Premier, to sign an agreement that could see hydrogen from the east coast of this country being sold to Germany. We're still minutes away from the signing of that agreement, so let's go now to our Garrett Berry, who's standing by live in the port of Stephenville. So, Garrett, what are you seeing on the ground tonight?
What we're seeing, Carolyn, is a real show of force in terms of industry power players coming to Stephenville tonight. Several managers and CEOs of some of the most famous companies in the world, Bayer Pharmaceuticals, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz. But what we're going to be talking about tonight is not gasoline cars, it's hydrogen energy. We expect in about 10 minutes that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will take the stage and sign an agreement with his German counterpart. It'll set the stage to export Canadian hydrogen power to Germany. Stephenville is a really interesting place for this agreement to be signed. This region is kind of debating a project of its own today. It's pitched by World Energy GH2, and the project would massively change the landscape here in the Port-au-Port Peninsula. We're talking more than 160 wind turbines, hundreds of meters tall. All that wind power will be used to make ammonia and hydrogen energy for export. The company wants to send that power to Germany. The company behind the project says it will be the first of its kind in Canada, and just for example, it says it could produce enough energy to switch every driver to an electric car in this province. But before all that, it needs to pass an environmental approval and a long environmental assessment process. We're going to see exactly what is signed here in Stephenville tonight and how that agreement might change the conditions underlying this project that's currently being debated in this region. Reporting live for Here and Now, I'm Garrett Berry in Stephenville.
The province's health authorities are reviewing their mammography protocols after a potential issue was identified in the central region. The issue was flagged last night, and Central Health says it is following up with any patients who may be affected. So what does this mean? Here and Now's Ryan Cook joins us now with more. So Ryan, what is the problem here?
Well, Carolyn, we don't have a great understanding of the problem just yet, but Central Health says it's related to viewing workstations. They say that some of their viewing workstations did not meet the recommended technical standard for reviewing mammography images. Now, these workstations are kind of like computer monitors that show breast scans, and we don't really have answers on what was lacking with these Central Health stations, but as you can imagine, image quality is very important, and it can vary from one brand or model to the next.
So the first thing that springs to mind for many, I'm sure it did for me anyways, is the Cameron inquiry, another issue with breast cancer testing. Do we know if we're dealing with something like that?
Like you said, certainly the first thing that springs to mind, but we just don't know the scope of this yet, if people are going to be affected, and if they're affected, how they'll be affected. We do know that the Cameron inquiry was about a screening test, and this seems to be about medical imaging, so there's a bit of a difference there. Central Health says that it's going to be sending letters to patients if their images need to be reviewed, and they'll call people if they have been directly impacted. I spoke with a woman in Grand Falls, Windsor, who's really worried that she might be one of those people. Her name is Sherry Strobridge, and she had a routine mammogram in April. The results came back fine at the time, but she actually missed a call from Central Health last night, and now she's left wondering. She's undergone treatment for pre-cancer issues in the past, and it runs in her family.
Both my mother and my sister have breast cancer, so there's always that family link that concerns you when you hear these kinds of situations, because I always want to be on top of my health issues, and I feel like my being proactive has kind of been pulled out from underneath me.
Strobridge said that her mind immediately went to the Cameron inquiry and she really hopes that she's wrong. But one thing that she wants to see is the government handle this openly and honestly with patience and with the public.
Okay, and some of the big issues flagged in the Cameron inquiry were delays and misinformation in what the health authorities shared with the people affected.
Exactly, and Sherry Strobridge says that she's really hoping that that's not the case here. And that's also what Paul Dinn, the opposition critic for health, that's what he's saying as well. He wasn't pleased that Health Minister Tom Osborne wasn't doing interviews today.
Well, I would have liked to hear a response from him already, just to get out there as being, the head of the department and government's selection as minister. I would have hoped that he would be out ahead of this and make some comment.
Now, just before 4 o'clock today, the other 3 health authorities sent news releases saying that they're also looking into the issue. They'll have an update sometime next week. Central Health says they'll have an update tomorrow at 1:30. And by that time, we're hoping to know a lot more, like what the issue actually is, how many patients were affected, and if there's potential for serious harm to breast cancer patients here.
Still a lot of questions. Thank you so much, Ryan. That's the CBC's Ryan Cook reporting from our newsroom.
I'll tell you, it was another beautiful start to the day, but taking a look at what's happening right now, we do have lots of cloud cover has moved in. Temperatures around 20 degrees in St. John's. That humidex value feeling more like 25, and those southerly winds around 22 kilometers per hour. So what we have going on is area of high pressure that's moving away to the east, and then an area of low pressure that's moving in. If I zoom in a little bit, you can already start to see some of those showers affecting the southern areas of the island, and some of those showers even making its way towards Burin Peninsula and eventually the Avalon as we head through the evening. Now, lots of moisture associated with this. This will move in tonight, continue through at least the first half of tomorrow morning. And with that, also some very muggy conditions across eastern areas of the island. Will stick around for a few days until we get into Sunday. Even central, you'll see those muggy conditions as well. I'll get into the full forecast coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Greg Parsons delivered his 6th victim impact statement today, 6 times reliving his mother's murder, 6 times urging the parole board to keep Brian Doyle behind bars. And like previous times, Parsons' request was denied, but as Here and Now's Ariana Calland reports, today was a victory for the man whose case is one of the most notorious wrongful convictions in Canada's history. But first, a warning, some may find the details of this story disturbing.
The story of Catherine Carroll's 1991 murder is one the province won't soon forget, and that's the way her son Greg Parsons wants it to stay.
Until he dies in prison or whatever, I'm going to continue fighting for my mom's dignity, and I want to fight to make sure that the truth of what happened here gets out.
Parsons provided a victim impact statement by video this afternoon to the Parole Board of Canada, detailing the trauma of losing his mother so violently at the hands of a man meant to be a friend, then serving time for a crime he didn't commit. Today, Brian Doyle, now in his 50s, presented himself as a changed man. I just want everybody to know that I'm not the man I was back then, and that I just want to be a better person, he told the parole board. Doyle had been granted day parole before, but it was revoked after failing to report a relationship. Members of the parole board pushed Doyle on his motivations for killing Carroll, then covering it up. Doyle said his crime in 1991 was fueled by alcohol and drugs, but the board says last year's parole violation showed there's still deception. The board found that until you are challenged, you don't come clean, a board member said. In the end, Doyle was granted 3 months day parole to complete a program, but Parsons says today is a victory, and it all comes down to this admission from Doyle. I am quite aware of the sexual component of the offense, and the rejection heightened the anger, which in turn caused the rage.
Brian Doyle finally admitted that it was the assault was of sexual nature. And he hasn't done that since he's been, but they backed him into the corner. And so there's a lot of questions got to be answered here, like why did he get that sweet second-degree murder deal?
Parsons believes the Crown should not have accepted Doyle's 2002 second-degree murder plea. He says it was premeditated and sexual in nature.
They had the confession, they had the DNA, they had the knife. yet they say they couldn't get a conviction. Well, they charged me with first and second. I got convicted of second without one piece of evidence.
Parsons wants a full review of Doyle's case to see if that plea should have been accepted. After 3 months of day parole, Brian Doyle will return to prison at William Head in BC. But this story is far from over. 3 decades later, Greg Parsons says there's still work to do. And when the next parole board hearing comes, he'll be there. Ariana Kellen, CBC News, St. John's.
Okay, let's check back in now with our top story tonight. The German Chancellor is in Stephenville along with the Prime Minister. They're expected at any moment to sign an agreement to export Canadian hydrogen energy to Germany. This is a very high-profile agreement that will shine the spotlight on a proposed wind to hydrogen project on the Port-au-Port Peninsula that would see wind turbines create hydrogen to convert to ammonia for shipment overseas. So we're going to have a look now, see how things are going, whether the Prime Minister is getting ready to sign that agreement with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Of course, Germany has an increased need for energy since Russia's war in Ukraine. This agreement is about getting a supply chain going that could also accelerate the development of a new energy industry that could help reduce emissions as Canada tries to get to net zero by 2050. This agreement could help speed up the process of getting green hydrogen projects like the one proposed on the Port-au-Port Peninsula up and running. So dipping in here now, it looks like the ceremony before the signing is continuing.
Wow, what a crowd.
We'll have a listen.
I want to take a few minutes of my 2 minutes and to say to the Prime Minister that I've been the chief so long. I actually was the chief when your dad was the Prime Minister. So that takes me back a few years. And I want to welcome the Vice Chancellor to this part of our beautiful, beautiful province, and all of you, the Prime Minister and the ministers that's here. I'm so happy that you're here at this time. It means that as Aboriginal people, we're moving in the right direction, and that direction is not easy to come by, but it's a long, long, hard road that we fought. Just to be here is incredible. It's a historical moment in itself, just to be able to speak to all of you. And that's, to me, it's one that I can tell my great-grandchildren about, the fact that I was the chief and young Mr. Trudeau was just a boy. That in itself is a good story. And Mr. Chancellor, we do have a gift for you. If you can make your way to our booth afterwards, we do have a gift from our community made by one of our Mi'kmaq artists. So if that's okay with you, we would welcome you. And Mr. Prime Minister and the Premier, I think we have a long ways to go, but we're getting there step by step. With that, I'll think I've used up my 2 minutes. Malalio, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Chief Joe. We will now proceed with remarks by the signatories. Maintenant, j'aimerais inviter le Premier ministre du Canada, Justin Trudeau.
Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you, Goody, for that introduction. It is such a pleasure to be here in Stephenville with Chancellor Scholz, Olaf, and Vice Chancellor Habeck. Robert, thank you so much, along with an extraordinary delegation of German business leaders and potential partners, but already friends, as we look towards an exciting and bright future. Premiers, Blaine, Dennis, Tim, and Andrew, thank you so much for being here as well. It is a demonstration of the commitment of not just one order of government, but of all orders of government, and indeed all Canadians, in building a better future, yes, with good jobs here in Canada, but a positive impact everywhere around the world, particularly in our friends like in Germany. I want to also recognize the rest of my team, Minister Wilkinson, Minister LeBlanc, Minister O'Regan, and everyone here from our Newfoundland and Labrador caucus. Of course, a big shout out to everyone from the private sector joining us, the folks who worked so hard to set up those booths and put forward their projects. I really hope everyone takes some time to see the extraordinary work and the extraordinary potential that came together very quickly to showcase the exciting opportunity and future that we are building here together. We're here today because of a shared vision for the future we want to build, where our workers have good jobs, where our economies are strong and resilient, and where our kids breathe clean air and inherit a healthy planet. That's why we're here, and that's why the agreement we're signing this afternoon is so important. The Canada-Germany Hydrogen Alliance is a historic step forward for our shared future. Our target is clear: working towards initial exports of Canadian hydrogen to Germany by 2025. And our outcomes are clear as well: creating middle-class jobs and local growth while delivering clean energy that will help fight climate change. This is a modern alliance for a modern world, where a healthy environment and a healthy economy go hand in hand. En formant l'Alliance pour l'hydrogène entre le Canada et l'Allemagne, on franchit un grand pas vers l'avenir. L'accord conclu aujourd'hui prévoit une collaboration sur divers plans, qu'il s'agisse d'attirer les investissements dans les projets liés à l'hydrogène ou de développer notre corridor commercial. Ici, chez nous, c'est un vote de confiance envers l'innovation canadienne et nos travailleurs. Et c'est un vote de confiance dans l'avenir du Canada comme leader en matière d'énergie propre. A few minutes ago, we saw some examples of exciting Canadian hydrogen innovation. German companies are already signing deals to buy made-in-Canada hydrogen. There is no doubt the demand is there. Of course, when it comes to energy security, the imperative is there too. Canada will always stand by our European allies, including Germany, in the face of Russian aggression. We've already pulled forward planned oil and gas production to add supply to the global market. But for tomorrow, we must look to resources like hydrogen, which can and will be clean and renewable. We can be the reliable supplier of the clean energy a net zero world needs. There are always skeptics. There's those who continue to say that hydrogen is far off or even uncertain. But that's not what we've seen today. Because we've seen where the world is going on energy. Russia's illegal, unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine has caused in the short term energy pressures that we are working very hard to try and counter and support as a supplier of energy to the world. But that invasion of Ukraine has also accelerated the path towards the future we knew was coming. A future where we're not simply no longer reliant on Russian oil and gas, but where we reduce our reliance on oil and gas altogether and transition towards the cleaner sources of energy a net zero world requires. But make no mistake, even as we pivot towards net zero, energy needs in the world, as quality of life goes up in the global south and everywhere around the world, the need for clean energy is almost limitless. And that's where Canada, and Atlantic Canada specifically, gets to step up. With our renewable resources, we have a huge advantage. But the great advantage when we talk about Atlantic Canada or any part of Canada is Canadians ourselves. Hardworking, ambitious, willing to build stronger communities, a better future for ourselves and our neighbors, be they down the street, around the bay, or on the other side of the world. And that's what we are here to celebrate, to launch, to begin. And I say begin knowing that many of these technologies that are being harnessed and developed very rapidly have been around for years, for decades even. But the opportunity we have to accelerate, to step up, is extraordinarily exciting. And Canadians, we know that sitting back and waiting for others to figure out how to build a cleaner future is not where we want to be. It's not how Canadians continue to lead on energy and a better future. Stepping up now is how we deliver good jobs, how we deliver growing economy, how we deliver a cleaner future, and how we continue to make the case that open, responsible, free democracies are the right solution. We cannot, as a world, continue to rely on authoritarian countries that will weaponize energy policy as Russia is, that don't concern themselves with environmental outcomes or labor rights or even human rights. People around the world want to know that they are participating in positive aspects of the economy with their food, with their purchases, with the energy that drives their lives. That's where Canada has an unimaginably great opportunity to step up. Notre vision pour l'avenir et nos objectifs communs sont clairs. Pour les Canadiens, pour les Allemands, pour tous nos amis à travers le monde. De bons emplois, des économies fortes, de l'air pur et propre. Again, thank you so much, Olaf, Robert, all of our friends for being here today. I'm now very pleased to turn it over to Chancellor Scholz.
Prime Minister, dear Justin, honorable ministers and premiers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for this warm and windy welcome here. Before my trip to Stephenville, I have learned that you have a world-class wind corridor here. You can imagine that as someone who has been living in Hamburg and close to the North Sea for many years, I appreciate coasts with strong winds. Regarding renewable energy, the German coast, however, cannot keep up with the conditions you have here. Hydrogen will play a major role in our future energy supply, especially in sectors that are difficult to decarbonize otherwise, such as industry, shipping, aviation, or heavy traffic. According to our National Hydrogen Strategy published in June 2020, Germany expects a need of 90 to 110 terawatt-hours hydrogen in 2030. We plan to build substantial electrolysis capacity in Germany. Still, we have to cover the majority of our hydrogen demands by imports. And we have to keep in mind, the prognosis I have just mentioned is based on figures prior to the Russian war of aggression. As a consequence, our need might be even higher under the new circumstances. We believe that Atlantic Canada presents a huge opportunity for us, but also for Canada to contribute to a green energy transition. Canada is a close and like-minded partner in the energy transition. We have to talk about short-term constraints and LNG, but in the long run, the real potential lies in green hydrogen from the wind-rich thinly populated Atlantic provinces. Best proof for this potential are the companies represented here with their projects I could just learn about. Since the beginning of our bilateral energy partnership, hydrogen has been a focus area within the constructive cooperation.
We're listening to German Chancellor Olaf Scholz spelling out really how important hydrogen energy will be for the future of energy resources in Germany, talking about the world-class wind corridor here in this province, how important all of this is for the future energy needs of Germany. So let's bring back reporter Garrett Berry, who is in Stephenville right now, listening in. So Garrett, we just heard the German Chancellor talk about the needs and the wind corridor. What have you gleaned so far from this Canada-Germany Hydro Alliance, as they're calling it?
Right, Carolyn. Well, what we've heard from the speeches so far, because we don't have a copy of this agreement yet, but what we've heard from the speeches is that this agreement does include a date. They're talking about 2025 as a goal to start exporting hydrogen energy from Canada to Germany. Now, it's not specified where that hydrogen will come from, so it's not an agreement for Newfoundland hydrogen, not an agreement for Nova Scotia hydrogen. It's an agreement for Canadian hydrogen. And aside from that, the points that we've been able to glean so far are pretty general. They're talking about, securing supply chains and developing a transatlantic supply corridor. So it's not clear what this agreement is going to mean for proponents here in Newfoundland and Labrador. I've been telling you about the company that wants to build a pretty big wind farm at the Port-au-Port Peninsula, and they're still waiting to, find out what this agreement is going to mean for them. The people who are debating this project are also going to, try to figure out what this agreement is going to mean for their communities. But despite all that, government and Prime Minister Trudeau did say that this is a clear sign to industry and provincial leaders that this is a high priority for the government and for the Germany government as well. He said proponents in attendance could find business partners here at this trade show in Stephenville. In fact, he kind of boasted that that's already taken place. He said that German companies have signed deals already to get Canadian energy onto their shores. Trudeau also talked about the future that the country wants to build. Rather, talk about not only reducing greenhouse gas, but also the creation of middle-class jobs and how this could be a vector to, invest in the economy, achieve dual goals. Of course, this is all, as we've been hearing, a response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Canadian government says this is sort of part of their strategy to respond to that. We also heard the German Chancellor talk about that the need now is heightened because of that invasion. The Canadian government says this is part of the plan to try to fill the gaps and see if it can step up in the short term and meet the world's energy needs. Reporting live for Here Now, I'm Garrett Berry in Stephenville.
Well, temperatures today out there pretty nice across the board into the low to mid 20s, really 24 degrees in St. John's, 24 in Deer Lake as well. And those temperatures a bit cooler across coastal areas of Labrador. Anyway, this temperature in Cartwright was actually this morning, and then that temperature has dropped through the day. 22 is what it was in Happy Valley Goose Bay. You can see that temperature down to 12 degrees right now in Cartwright. Now, taking a look at the numbers as far as humidex values go across the province, for the most part, the most humid air at this point is around central, and even the south coast as well is feeling more like 24 in St. Lawrence right now. Same thing for Burgeo. And as we head through the next couple of hours through the overnight, we're actually going to see those humidex values increase. This is where we're sitting in the dew points. You're already seeing 17, 18 right now along the south coast, but take a look at what happens as we head through the overnight and into tomorrow. We're going to start to feel those humidex values into the mid 20s, and that's because those mid 30s, and that's because those dew points will be closer to the 20s, and that's when things really start to get uncomfortable and feeling pretty tropical actually as we head through the afternoon on Wednesday. Here's a look at the bigger picture right now. Lots of moisture associated with this. It actually comes down all the way from Florida. And if you can see already those showers rolling in across southern areas of the island and then eastern areas as well, and there is a ton of moisture available for this system. So we're expecting that to move over through the night tonight. It moves through fairly quickly though, as we see this system bring those showers, again already starting on the south coast, but they'll move further north, likely heavy at times through the night tonight for the eastern half of the island. By overnight is when we'll see it in the metro area, and then that moves through fairly quickly. It'll taper to showers by the time we get into mid-morning tomorrow, and then eventually taper off altogether. Taking a look at the amounts expected, the eastern half of the island, like I said, we'll see the most significant rain. We could see somewhere between 30 to 50 millimeters of rain falling fairly quickly tonight, and then ending pretty much by like 8 or 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Temperatures tonight between 16 to 18 degrees. Those winds the strongest the further east you go, so they'll be out of the south around 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. But even in the morning, early morning hours, we could see those gusts in excess of about 60, maybe even 70 kilometers per hour as well. Temperatures across coastal areas of Labrador are actually going to warm up as we get into the morning. Taking a look at the future tracker, Wednesday morning into the afternoon, you see those showers move through. But then into the afternoon, looks like some areas of thunderstorms potentially developing across central and then parts of the northeast coast as well. That will move through fairly quickly as well, but it'll generally be an unsettled day tomorrow. That chance of showers will generally linger pretty much across the board. So there's that thunderstorm risk tomorrow, probably somewhere between 2 and maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening is when that is expected. Taking a look at the temperatures for tomorrow, 24, 25, but again, very humid through the afternoon. Same thing through central with that risk of thunderstorms as you head towards the west coast. Those temperatures a tad cooler. That's because we're in northwesterly winds around 20 kilometers per hour, but enough to keep those temperatures a little cooler tomorrow. Same thing for the northern peninsula, and then Cartwright. Again, those temperatures warming up as we head through the afternoon. Temperatures generally sitting around 22 or 23 degrees for Happy Valley Goose Bay, and Lab City you'll hover around the 19-degree mark. So taking a look at the long-range forecast. Oh, that's not the long-range forecast. But anyway, taking a look at the long-range forecast over the next couple of days, we will see the temperatures into the 20s, around 22 degrees for your Sunday. And then for central Newfoundland, temperatures clearing, or rather dropping a bit on Saturday and even into Sunday. And then for Labrador, your temperatures will sit around 18 or 17 or 18 degrees through the day, but unsettled conditions.
And I look forward to signing that declaration.
Checking back in with the event in Stephenville tonight, you see the Premier talking, Premier Andrew Furey talking about our wind, how it has the power to overturn transport trucks, and soon it could be used to send energy to Germany. We'll have more from Stephenville coming up. Well, there it is, the signing of the joint declaration of intent, the hydrogen alliance between Canada and Germany. It happened just moments ago in Stephenville. Well, the Canada-Germany Hydro Alliance commits to a timeline on energy exports to Germany. It says Canadian hydrogen will be delivered by 2025. So how likely is it that the port-to-port project would be approved and operational by that target date? Delia Warren is a renewable energy consultant with an offshore energy company in Boston. She's skeptical but optimistic.
My first impression would be that is extremely ambitious, but where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's adequate funding, there's a way. And when there's a need, you can get things done. The technology exists. It has been tested. There are projects happening in the world, electrolyzer technology that is in production in the world, but this is going to be a major jump in scale. My main concern with the timeline, although just on its face it is extremely ambitious, would be delays caused by an inadequate consultation process. We've seen other projects. One example is the Cape Wind project in Massachusetts. It's an offshore wind project. They were they weren't as extensive in their stakeholder consultation and engagement as they could have been, and it actually ended up setting the industry back by about 10 years. In the end of the project never got built. Okay. So that is a major concern. However, I do know that the need is real. So I hope that there is a way, and I'm sure everybody involved in the project is aware of the ambitious timeline associated with it. But, I hope that there is a way that the stakeholder consultation process, the environmental impact assessments, all of those types of studies that need to be done and need to be done correctly can be done within that timeline. This is an area where the global energy community is placing an enormous amount of focus. I've always thought that the only real limitations in terms of transforming our energy sector lie in human ingenuity and will. And I think both of those factors are really at work here, trying to solve both the climate crisis and the global energy security crisis. So, this is something where I feel the rate of technological development is going to be extremely rapid, and the issues around transporting hydrogen technology will be improved upon because they have to be. So.
Some optimism, but also some words of caution there. Well, the chair of the World Energy GH2, the company behind the proposed wind to hydrogen project on the Port-au-Port Peninsula, says he hopes this MOU between Canada and Germany will send a message to private investors that both countries will support the green hydrogen industry.
Hopefully cooperation at both the federal and provincial level to put in place a regulatory framework that can allow us to bring these projects to market in an expeditious fashion. These are very, very large capital projects. Our project alone is about $12 billion US, and a lot of planning, a lot of upfront money has to be spent in going through the permitting processes and so on. And you can imagine that people that provide that capital want certainty. They want clarity as to those processes. They want to know what the outcome is. They want defined timelines, all that kind of thing. And we've learned how to do that in various other industries. The fossil fuel industry, unfortunately, we still have in this country the same permitting process for fossil fuels as we do renewables, which is, of course, a bit of a head scratcher. In that presumably we want to move aggressively in the direction of a renewables industry, and to do that, we need to figure out how we can streamline that and that regulatory process. It will be an enormous catalyst for the industry. We expect it'll bring great visibility, and we think that this will be the start of a lot of momentum. We are in a global race. Australia is moving very quickly. The United States, with its recent legislation signed by President Biden just last week, the Inflation Reduction Act, puts in place enormous incentives to invest in green hydrogen. So you will see a huge amount of production coming into the market that will tie up the supply chain. Canada is in a race against those other jurisdictions. So we've got to move quickly. We can't afford to do what we did with our natural gas opportunity, which is to have an enormous resource and not be able to build the export terminals necessary to take it to market, which is tragic in my opinion. This, on the other hand, is a brand new opportunity for us, and we've got to seize it.
Well, we heard earlier in the show from Greg Parsons. Today, the Parole Board of Canada granted his mother's killer 3 months of day parole. But Parsons says it was a victory, in part because the board acknowledged material from the Mr. Big sting that helped lead to Brian Doyle's arrest, material that Parsons got access to and brought to the board's attention. Parsons has been pushing for a review of how Doyle's case was handled by the Crown's office in 2002. He spoke hours ago with the CBC's Ariana Kelland.
Greg, you said today during the parole board hearing this was your 6th victim impact statement. Was there anything different this time around?
Not really, but I've been doing more research, and my wife and I have been working on this now for years. I'm so glad that the Parole Board of Canada accepted this evidence from the Mr. Big's sting, and today was a victory. Brian Doyle finally admitted that it was the assault was of sexual nature, and he hasn't done that since he's been, but they backed him into the corner, and so there's a lot of questions got to be answered here, like why did he get that sweet second-degree murder deal? All the facts are there for a first-degree murder. They tortured me for years, but it's not about me. I don't care anymore. It's about my mom's dignity and her legacy. He's now saying that he had a relationship with my mom. Well, if you're having a relationship, why did you break it through the back basement, go to the kitchen, get a knife, take off all your clothes, and stand over her bed? That's horrific. Can you imagine waking up in that situation? That's exactly what happened that night. And I'm just glad that the truth is finally coming out. And there's a lot of people have a lot of hard questions to ask, like my former lawyers, even the judge that heard his case. Did Judge Green hear about everything that was in that Mr. Biggs thing, or was that suppressed from him as well? I think there should be a review done into the Crown's office here. It's crazy. It's unbelievable. He's out now for 3 months to do this program, and under tight scrutiny, he won't be allowed out in the nighttime or anything. He'll be transported to the meetings and whatnot, and he goes back to prison in 3 months. But unfortunately, within another 5 months after that, he can reapply for parole again. So this is never ending for me, and I'm never going to stop doing this until everybody knows the true story of what happened to my mom. This is one of the biggest cover-ups in Newfoundland since Mount Cashel.
I want to back up a little bit about what the sexual intent means to you, because for years you had said that, and that was part of the reason why you believed he shouldn't have been able to get the second-degree deal, that he should have been tried for first-degree murder. What did it feel like to hear him admit that that was part of the crime?
Well, it was a vindication for everything that I've been saying over the years. My trial was 5 months long. It was crazy. One of the longest in Newfoundland history. They scrutinized my school marks. And here they had every piece of evidence. They had the confession, they had the DNA, they had the knife, yet they say they couldn't get a conviction. Well, they charged me with first and second. I got convicted of second without one piece of evidence.
course, Russia's war in Ukraine is what's fueling Germany's increased energy needs as it tries to get off Russian oil. Federal Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson says time is of the essence for getting Canadian energy projects off the ground.
But certainly hydrogen is one of those areas where Canada does have some unique capacities and unique resources that can enable us to be competitive in the world. But of course, others are looking at this too, and it means that you actually have to be strategic and you have to move quickly. And so the government of Canada certainly needs to ensure there's a regulatory environment in place that will enable the development of projects for export, but also for domestic use. And it means that we may need to make strategic investments to try to accelerate the work that's being done, such that Canada will be an early mover in this game. And that is something that, you know, we look at tools like the Net Zero Accelerator or the Clean Fuels Fund that we've established for exactly those purposes.
There's risk involved with everything we do. The biggest thing that I think is a positive is that right now we're not looking at public investment, we're looking at private investment. So we have private entities that are coming to us with their own capital. So this is not a case of, you know, government of Newfoundland and Labrador, you need to pony up X number of million/billion to make this happen. They're the ones that want to invest. But at the same time, it's like any resource. We need to get a return on that for the people that it belongs to. When it comes to our wind resource, when you're talking about hydrogen and the conversion, it's going to demand a significant amount of water. Again, another one of our resources that we're blessed to have. But we have to be careful for. So the biggest thing now is trying to factor all that in. Like, I don't foresee us seeing a benefit anytime while I'm in this job. I'm like many people, I'm trying to make decisions that we may not see the benefit of years from now, but we need to set up a structure, hopefully, that will benefit us, benefit the next generation that comes. So yeah, I mean, look, we don't want to mess this up because, again, there's volatility when it comes to any resource, renewable or non-renewable. We just see that even in the last 6 months, we've had geopolitical situations that have just turned everything sideways. It's hard to predict that. So there's always a cautiousness and a need to balance all these factors, and some of them are extremely hard to predict.
Well, of course, tonight in Stephenville, the German Chancellor, along with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, signed an agreement, a hydrogen alliance between our two countries. Canada says it aims to support its allies in Europe. The Prime Minister and the German Chancellor are about to
we're facing
speak
right now as a
with
world,
the media. Let's listen in.
Whether it's coming through this pandemic, whether it's dealing with climate change, whether it's dealing with the war in Ukraine, but also building for a stronger future. For many years, we've been talking and hearing about how it's important to make sacrifices, to change our behaviors, to protect our environment. We've also been hearing that there will be economic opportunities that come with taking steps towards being green. But it seems like there have been more challenges and more sacrifices than there have been opportunities and growth that comes from green investments, from clean investments. And what this trip is showing, what this friendship and partnership is showing, is that the time is now for us to start developing that future that includes not just protected environment and a successful fight against climate change, but good, sustainable jobs for families, for communities, a growing economy, and contributions to make the world a better place for everyone who lives in it. And that's what the energy solutions we're talking about here in Stephenville, Newfoundland are. But that's what the entire partnership between Canada and Germany about building a better future in which friends can rely on each other and support each other as we build a better future is all about. And I'm just so pleased to be able to be here with Olaf today and to launch all the conversations and work we're going to have in the coming years together. C'est un grand plaisir de pouvoir accueillir mon ami Olaf Scholz ici à Terre-Neuve et Labrador après 2 jours à Montréal et Toronto où on a pu parler des enjeux auxquels notre monde fait face, que ce soit la crise économique, la crise causée par la guerre en Ukraine, par la Russie, que ce soit la crise climatique ou la pandémie. Il y a énormément de défis auxquels on fait face.
Of course, we're listening to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, along with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, signed an agreement this evening, a hydrogen agreement. We'll be following this story in the coming days, and you can find more on CBC's website, cbc.ca/nl. Thanks so much for joining.